the intelligent minorities can engineer consent through the use of manipulation, propaganda, and control. And we should do it.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis, and the federal government is responding with decisive action.
I know that the American people share my deep belief that if a danger exists in the world, it is a danger shared by all.
We need to actually double down on the public health measures.
You can't look at that television and say, nothing happened on the 6th.
I'd like you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple that you are a nasty person.
Most people have no awareness of how easily our behavior and even our identity can be completely taken over. But people are waking up. I spent 20 years in the U.S. military. I'm a behavior expert. I've trained PSYOPs. I'm the best-selling author in behavioral psychology. I want to show you exactly how to identify what we call engineered reality, or what some people call PSYOPs.
미군 심리전 전문가가 직접 공개합니다. 우리의 생각과 행동은 이미 설계되고 있습니다. 그가 만든 조작 감별 공식, 지금부터 시작합니다.
So the first thing you need to know is following the FATE model: focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. This is what triggers the mammalian part of our brain that makes all of our real decisions. The first part is focus. PSYOPs always aim to hijack your attention with repetition, shocking visuals of fear-inducing scenarios. Some examples are like 24/7 media coverage of a crisis, or constant repetition of terms like unprecedented. So with this, pause and ask, why is this message being pushed so aggressively? So compare how much airtime different stories are receiving and note any disproportionate focus. The second part here is authority. Trusted figures might shift their tone or positions unnaturally to support the narrative. So watch very closely for expert panelists or endorsements where authority figures might speak outside of their expertise. Pay close attention to that one. Then we have tribe. So messages that polarize opinions or create stark in-groups versus out-groups, or exploit our tribal instincts. For example, labeling groups as patriots versus traitors, or scientific versus deniers. Be very careful when you hear that language. Finally, we have emotion. So be wary of any communication that triggers strong emotions like fear, hope, or outrage without any clear, verifiable evidence. So emotional responses suppress critical thinking. Emotional responses suppress critical thinking. So as a tip here, analyze the evidence that's presented to you. If facts are replaced by appeals to emotion, you need to be very, very cautious. As an example of this, think about like a news channel repeatedly showing images of empty grocery shelves and panicked shoppers during a food supply scare that dominates every broadcast.
다음은 가장 교묘한 기법입니다. 당신의 정체성 자체를 무기로 씁니다. 작은 동의 하나가 어떻게 당신을 바꾸는지 보여드리겠습니다.
Next, question novelty. Our brains are wired to focus on sudden or unusual changes because they signal potential threats or opportunities. And this is an evolutionary survival mechanism. PSYOPs exploit this by creating events that break normal expectations, like unexpected crises or dramatic revelations. So ask yourself, why is this new? So consider if the event or somebody's message has been artificially manufactured or timed. Look for patterns like sudden shifts in public opinion, trending hashtags that are unusual, or viral videos that seem very coincidental. So for this one, just picture a new viral video just claims to expose a government cover-up, but it conveniently comes out the exact same day that there's some damaging evidence against some high-ranking official. The timing shifts public focus. All of this is part of the NCI system I developed for teaching tradecraft and extreme psychological operations. Let's talk about how this works. So cognitive dissonance comes up when new information clashes with our identity or our beliefs. So PSYOPs exploit the hell out of this by including micro-agreements. Micro-agreements are little small, seemingly harmless concessions to shape your identity. And over time, you're going to unconsciously align your behavior to reduce that internal conflict. And as a weaponization example of this, a PSYOP might present you as a part of moral or intelligent enlightenment, like only good citizens do XYZ. If you disagree with that, you risk some identity conflict there. So reflect on your identity and ask, am I being nudged to identify with some other group? So be very careful of any campaigns that are asking for seemingly minor commitments there, like signing petitions, changing your profile picture that evolves into some bigger compliance or demand later. As an example of this,
조작의 목적은 항상 돈입니다. 어떤 정보든 수혜자를 찾으면 진짜 의도가 보입니다. 전문가도 언론도 자선단체도 예외는 없습니다.
next is follow the money. So there's a trail of beneficiaries here. So identifying who benefits always is going to reveal the motive. So look for funding sources like sponsorships or political connections that are tied to the narrative. So use tools like opensecrets.org or public financial records to see who profits from this. So for policies or campaigns, identify the industries like pharmaceuticals, tech companies, etc., that stand to gain the most. So to illustrate this in your mind right now, picture a charity that's promoting clean energy awareness, and they seem noble until an investigations are showing that it's funded by a solar panel corporation that's lobbying for
마지막입니다. 조작은 언제나 말의 함정을 씁니다. 심리전이 가장 즐겨 쓰는 논리적 오류 패턴. 이것만 알면 웬만한 조작은 안 통합니다.
Let me give you 10 of these so that your brain gets hardwired to start seeing everything a whole lot differently. So the first one that you're going to see all the time, appeal to emotion. So this uses fear and anger and hope to bypass logic. So like, if you don't support this, children are going to suffer. Next is the straw man argument. This misrepresents somebody's argument so they can attack it better. So somebody might say they oppose the lockdowns because they don't care about lives. Think about that one. Number 3 is the bandwagon fallacy. So this claims that something is true because everyone supports it. And this is, you hear this all the time. Millions of people agree with X, Y, and Z. You should agree with it too. Number 4 is the false dilemma. This presents only 2 extreme options and it ignores alternatives. So it's the either you're with us or you're against us fallacy there. Number 5 is the ad hominem attacks. This is the attack of the person and not the argument. Be very observant for this. So this is when you hear you can't trust her. She's not a scientist. You can't do X because they're not qualified based on X. Ad hominem is very common, and I want your brain to be able to spot it. Number 6 is appeal to authority. And this is a claim that something is true because an authority figure said so. So like Dr. X supports it, so it's absolutely right. You have to trust the science. Number 7 is the slippery slope. These are claims that one action is going to lead to some extreme negative outcome. So you've heard this before. Somebody says something like, if we allow this, we're going to lose all of our freedoms. All of our freedoms are gone. The country is gone. All of that kind of talk like that. Be very attuned to when you hear that and very cautious when you hear that. Number 8, hasty generalizations. And these are broad claims that are made with very little evidence. So the example is 2 politicians lied, so all of them must be corrupt. So giant claim, tiny bit of evidence. 2 politicians might have lied, so they're all corrupt. Number 9 is huge. It's the red herring. So this distracts people with irrelevant information. You've heard this maybe as an example when somebody says, why are we worrying about climate change when we have so much crime going on right now? It's an argument of distraction. Number 10 is false equivalence. This compares 2 things as equals when they're absolutely not equal. So you'll hear somebody say something in the news that's both sides have extremists, so they're exactly the same. That's a very damaging one.